Compressors. Okay, I'm gonna go on record today and say that compressors and boost pedals are probably the hardest pedals for me to demonstrate. Because most of the time, the sounds and the effect doesn't really translate that well over a YouTube video, especially if you're just watching casually through your smartphone. So for that reason, I want to change it up a little bit. Instead of my normal playthrough demo video, I'm going to show you a few practical ways that I use a compressor, whether it's playing live or recording sessions or making these YouTube videos. And I'm going to show you how this Atlas compressor from Source Audio is kind of perfect for all that. All right, before I get into showing you how I use a compressor and how I dial it in, I wanted to go over some of the features that the Atlas compressor has. Now, mind you, this has a ton of awesome features and it gets pretty deep, so I'm just gonna cover some of the most important ones. Let's start with the three-way toggle in the center here. Now you can see that there's three compressor types labeled: studio, optical, and dual. And in actuality, there's three more compressor types. If you look at the top right of the pedal, you see a label that says Alt. There's actually a button on the top of the pedal. When you press it, this light blinks and it puts you in alternate mode. And that allows you to select another bank of three different compressor models, as well as activate the alternate functions of the four knobs, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. So the six compressor types that we have here, starting on the left, we've got Studio, which is a rack mount VCA style compression, according to the manual I'm reading. In the middle, we have Optical, which mimics the smooth response of an LA2A style rack compressor, very famous compressor. And on the far right, we have a dual band compression, which I don't know exactly what that is. And then by pressing the Alt button, you can see that the LED, the main LED turns red, and that tells us that we're in the second bank of compressors. So starting here, this one on the Studio switch is the 1176 FET compressor, which is another very famous rack compressor used in the studio. In the middle, we've got an LED-based pedal compressor that they call Cubic Zirconia, and it's based on a discontinued yellow compressor. I'm gonna say it's based on the Diamond compressor. And then to the far right, we've got the Dual Jangle, which is a modern style dual band compressor. So according to them, it can enhance stuff like 12-string guitars, really jangly strumming parts or arpeggiated parts. I should also point out that there's a feature called bass optimization. I believe if you power up the pedal while holding down the Alt button, that activates the bass optimization mode. So really targeting those lower end frequencies of a bass guitar, which I think is a really cool feature. So what I want to do is grab a guitar, set the knobs here on the pedal at noon, just as kind of a baseline demonstration. And then I'm gonna play through all six compressors so you kind of get an idea of what they sound like, how they react to my playing, and what the differences are. Here's my guitar sound with the compressor bypassed. Okay, so real quickly, I'm just gonna go over the knobs and the functions as well as the alternate functions. For this, we're going to stay on the dual compressor type, starting with the first knob, threshold. So when you turn it down counterclockwise all the way, that's going to give you the most squishiness. And you can see with a really cool feature on this pedal is the center light changes color, kind of denoting how much compression is happening. See it? And then obviously, when you turn it all the way clockwise, barely any squishing going on. Keep it in the middle for now. The ratio, kind of the same. The more you turn it up, the higher compression ratio you have. Every good compressor, you gotta have a blend knob. So with this knob, you can blend in your dry, unaffected signal along with the compressed signal. And what's cool about that is you can still kind of preserve the attack of the uncompressed signal as well as blend in a little bit of the squishiness. So it almost makes the compressor kind of transparent in a way. When you turn down the knob, it's going to be 100% compression. And something that I just learned is that on the dual mode setting, it almost acts like a tone knob. Or it almost acts like a bass frequency knob. But let's quickly jump over to the studio setting to really hear how the blend knob works. Maximum compression. That's completely dry. And of course, you've got a master output knob, kind of a master volume, which is a nice touch because a lot of times when you're compressing a signal, you get a little bit of volume loss. So this kind of compensates for that, and apparently it goes from -24 to +24 dB, so you can actually probably use this as a boost. Pretty cool. Okay, so I mentioned before that pressing this Alt button on the top right allows you to access the secondary functions of the knobs. So starting with the threshold knob, I don't know why it's not labeled like the others, but the secondary function of the threshold knob is actually makeup gain. So like I said before, when you compress a signal, sometimes you get a drop in volume, and the makeup gain knob will allow you to add a little bit of that back in. It kind of works a little bit different than the overall output knob. I believe the output knob is kind of like a master volume, which works after the blend knob, and I believe the makeup gain will work pre-blend knob. Here is that makeup gain. And 12 o'clock is going to be, dead center 0, 0. Now the alternate function on ratio is a tone knob, which I think is great because when you squish stuff with a compressor, a lot of times you roll off the top end. So this allows you to add back some of that. Which I really like that feature. Now, the alternate functions of the blend and output are typical knobs that you would see on any compressor. It's the attack and the release. Some other interesting features on this pedal, you have stereo ins and outs capability. There's 2 inputs and 2 outputs, which is really cool for, if you have a stereo wet dry setup, or if, like me, you're running stereo effects. I use all my time bass, my wet effects in stereo, so I could effectively put this in line with my delay and my chorus and my reverb and use it as a stereo compressor. And like all Source Audio pedals, you can expand the features of this pedal by hooking it up to the Neuro app, either on the desktop or through your smartphone. I'm not going to demonstrate it for you because it gets really, really deep, but you can get way into fine-tuning a ton of different parameters with things like a real-time readout of your signal gain reduction, downloadable factory presets, and also if you hook up an external MIDI controller to this, you can have up to 128 presets. That's a lot of compressor presets. I don't know if you would use that, but you can. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about some of the ways that I like to use a compressor pedal. And this first way is something that I recently discovered through using this Atlas compressor. So I call this cleaning up your hot rig. So you might have a situation where your guitar has some high output pickups. So for instance, I have my guitar that has active EMGs, and this humbucker is pretty hot. And when you pair something like this with an amp that's not necessarily the cleanest amp, or something that doesn't have like a lot of clean headroom, it's almost impossible to get a clean tone, kind of on the edge of breakup. So here's how it sounds. Compressor off. Now I can try to play around with the guitar's volume knob. But then, you know, depending on the guitar, you start to lose a lot of frequencies and a lot of character. Now, one thing I like to do in this situation with the Atlas compressor is, A, use it as a compressor to compress kind of the signal coming from these hot pickups. So I have it set to studio, everything is on noon. I might move the blend a little bit towards the wet side, so it's less of the dry signal and more of the compressed signal. Set the threshold a little bit lower, so it gets a little squishier, right? And then I'm gonna move the output, the master volume, so to speak, a little bit down. And I'm on 10 on my guitar. And that sounds really squashy, but it's clean. Something I might also do is adjust the tone to add back some of that sparkle. So let's... Now that's a little bit too squishy for me, so I'm gonna bring back some of the threshold. Now here's the difference. I'm all on 10. With the compressor. We can even get cleaner. So it's kind of acting like a reverse boost pedal, a deboost pedal, if you will. An unboost pedal. So the other way I like to use a compressor pedal is before a little bit of overdrive or distortion, and it kind of acts almost like a boost, but more like a sustain pedal. When you play a note, the note will sustain a little bit longer, and we can test that. So I'm on the optical setting. I'm going to tweak the threshold, the ratio, and the blend. So let's hear it sustain. Here it is off. So you can hear, back on, the note is still ringing out. So let's say you have kind of a low gain setting for rhythm. And you want to retain the character of your low gain, but you still want a little bit of sustain for your solo. Obviously, you could turn up the gain knob on your amp. You could, you know, slam it with an overdrive pedal or a boost pedal, but that's going to add more saturation and more gain. By using a compressor pedal, you kind of still retain the gain of your signal, of your amp signal or whatever pedal you're using, but you can add sustain to it through the use of compression. And that's something that I would always have on tour. Whenever I would take a solo, I would always kick on the compressor just for that little bit of extra sustain. It just feels nice. All right, guys, there you have it. If you want more information on the Source Audio Atlas Compressor and where to buy it, links are in the description. If you like this video, please click that thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, gear demos and guitar lessons, click that subscribe button. Thanks again for watching. I'm RJ Ronquillo, and I'll see you in the next video.